You think you're a good person. You smile when you're supposed to. You say yes when you want to say no. You avoid conflict, keep the peace, stay agreeable. People like you've become the reliable one, the one who never complains, the one who's always fine. And yet you're exhausted, disconnected, sometimes angry for reasons you can't quite explain. Maybe you've even asked yourself in the quiet moments, why do I feel so fake? Carl Jung had a word for the version of you the world sees, the persona. It's the social mask we all wear. It helps us fit in, stay safe, and get approval. But what happens when the mask starts to consume the face beneath it? When the nice girl or good guy act becomes so deeply ingrained that you forget who you actually are? In this video, we're going to dive into the dark side of being too good, too agreeable, too accommodating, too afraid to ruffle feathers. Drawing from Jungian psychology, we'll explore how constantly performing for acceptance slowly erodes your connection to your true self. We'll talk about what lies beneath the smile and why repressing your anger, your needs, your desires doesn't make you virtuous. It makes you sick. This isn't just theory. You'll see how the persona is born, how it becomes a prison, and how the soul eventually revolts. We'll walk through what Jung called the individuation process, the psychological path of becoming whole, of integrating your shadow instead, of hiding it, of living a life that's honest, raw, and real. If you've ever felt like being nice is costing you something, like you're dying a slow emotional death while everyone around you thinks you're fine, this video is for you. The truth is, your persona is not who you are. And the longer you pretend it is, the more your real self slips away. From the moment we begin to interact with the world, something subtle yet powerful starts to take place. As infants and toddlers, we express ourselves freely, with raw emotion, unfiltered desires, and spontaneous reactions. We cry loudly when upset, throw tantrums when denied, and giggle uncontrollably when something delights us. But this authenticity doesn't last long. Very quickly, we are taught, sometimes through gentle correction, other times through punishment or rejection, that not all parts of us are welcome. A child who expresses anger too forcefully is scolded. A boy who cries is told to man up. A girl who speaks too confidently might be labeled bossy. Little by little, we begin to edit ourselves. We internalize messages about what makes us lovable, acceptable, and safe. And from these silent lessons, we begin crafting our first mask, the persona. This isn't done consciously. It's a survival mechanism, an adaptation to a world that rewards compliance and conformity. What we don't realize is that in protecting ourselves from rejection, we also begin to abandon the most essential parts of who we are. Carl Jung defined the persona as the social face we wear, the identity we show to the world in order to be accepted. It's not necessarily fake or manipulative. In fact, it's often formed out of a genuine desire to belong, to be loved, to avoid conflict. The persona allows us to function in society, to meet expectations, to build relationships. But the danger lies in forgetting it's just a role. When we wear the same mask for so long, we begin to believe it's who we truly are. We lose touch with what lies underneath. For instance, a person may develop a persona of being endlessly agreeable, polite, and self-sacrificing, because early in life they were praised for being the easy one. But over time, they may forget what they actually want, what they truly feel, or how to assert themselves. Jung warned that over-identification with the persona leads to a shallow, fragmented life, one where our actions serve our image, not our soul. The persona becomes a prison made of approval, where we perform a role but feel increasingly empty inside. We smile while secretly longing to scream. We succeed while quietly feeling like frauds. The self begins to suffocate behind the mask. Society, doesn't just tolerate the persona, it actively rewards it. Think about it. The obedient child is praised, the humble employee is promoted, the always smiling friend is beloved. We're applauded not for being authentic, but for being agreeable. The more we suppress our real feelings, our anger, sadness, frustration, or confusion, the more we're seen as good, mature, or strong. This creates a vicious cycle. The more praise we receive for wearing the mask, the more we fear taking it off. Vulnerability becomes risky. Honesty feels dangerous. So we hide our needs, mute our voice, and contort ourselves into what others want us to be. But Jung emphasized that what is repressed does not disappear. It only retreats into the unconscious. And there it festers. The shadow, the parts of ourselves we deny, grows larger. The more we cling to the persona, the more disconnected we become from our instincts, our creativity, and our vitality. We become ghosts of ourselves, performing a life that looks right from the outside, but feels dead on the inside. The cost of maintaining the mask is the slow erosion of the soul. Eventually, something breaks. It might look like a mental health crisis, a spiritual void, or a gnawing emptiness that no amount of success or affection can fill. This is often referred to as the midlife crisis, but Jung was clear, this reckoning can happen at any age. It's the moment when the carefully constructed persona begins to crack and the truth underneath starts to demand attention. You might wake up one day and realize you don't recognize your own life. The job, the relationships, the identity you've built, none of it feels real anymore. The mask no longer fits. The smile feels forced. The performance is exhausting. And beneath it all, the self you've exiled, the one with real needs, messy emotions and forgotten dreams, begins to stir. This is not a failure. It's the beginning of transformation. Jung believed that only by confronting the limits of the persona can we begin the journey toward individuation, the process of becoming whole. But first, we must acknowledge the mask. We must look it in the eye and ask, who am I when I'm not performing? This is the birth of true self-awareness and the first step toward reclaiming the life that belongs to you, not the one designed to please everyone else. We all want to be liked. It's part of being human. But somewhere along the line, many of us begin to believe that being liked is more important than being real. That being agreeable, pleasant, and undemanding is safer than being honest, complex, and bold. This is where the nice guy or good girl syndrome begins, not as a conscious choice, but as a survival strategy. Early in life, you might have learned that love came with conditions. You were rewarded for being quiet, compliant, helpful, and cheerful, especially when it meant denying your own needs. Over time, this pattern solidified into a persona, the peacemaker, the fixer, the one who never causes trouble. You became someone others could rely on. But at what cost? Every suppressed boundary, every silenced opinion, every fake smile chipped away at your authenticity. And because you were praised for it, you believed this version of yourself was not just acceptable but ideal. The world told you that self-abandonment was kindness, that emotional suppression was strength. You became addicted to approval, unaware that the self behind the mask was starving. Carl Jung would say that this addiction to being liked is the persona in overdrive. The nice guy or good girl isn't inherently bad, it's simply incomplete. The problem is not kindness or compassion, it's the erasure of your complexity. It's turning your entire self into a performance aimed at avoiding disapproval. And the longer you perform, the more detached you become from your true self. You begin to feel hollow, resentful, or anxious, but you can't show it because your identity is wrapped around being the good one. So you keep smiling, you keep saying yes, you overextend, overcompensate, overgive. You might even start to feel proud of your self-sacrifice, as if it's a badge of honor to always put others first. But this martyrdom is a trap. It breeds silent anger, emotional burnout, and a deep sense of invisibility. You start to notice that people don't really know you. They only know the version of you that makes them comfortable. And worse, they might take you for granted, because you've trained them to expect nothing but your endless accommodation. Behind the mask of the nice guy or good girl often lies a deep fear. The fear of being rejected if you show your real self. What if I say no? What if I disappoint someone? What if they think I'm selfish or rude or difficult? These fears come from early wounds, moments when authenticity was punished or when emotional needs were met with rejection. So you learned to adapt. You became what others needed you to be, instead of who you truly were. But that adaptation came at the cost of self-trust. Over time, you stopped listening to your inner voice. You began to doubt your feelings, to question your instincts. And as that inner compass faded, you became dependent on external validation to define your worth. Jung believed this disconnection from the self is what causes neurosis. Not the presence of conflict, but the repression of it. When your true thoughts and desires are exiled in favor of pleasing others, your psyche revolts. It starts with anxiety, perhaps depression, maybe chronic fatigue. These are not random symptoms. They are signs that your soul is suffocating under the weight of your performance. Healing from the nice guy, good girl syndrome doesn't mean becoming cruel or selfish. It means becoming whole. It means recognizing that real connection, the kind that nourishes the soul, requires honesty, not perfection. You have the right to say no. You have the right to have needs. You have the right to disappoint someone, if it means staying true to yourself. Jung's process of individuation is not about becoming who others want you to be, but who you truly are beneath the masks. This path requires courage. You will have to confront your fear of conflict, your guilt for setting boundaries, your shame for wanting more. But as you do, you begin to reclaim parts of yourself that were lost. You'll notice your relationships shift. Some may deepen, others may fall away. That's part of the process. The people who only loved your mask may not know how to love the real you. But that's okay, because as the persona dissolves, you create space for authenticity. And in that authenticity, something profound happens. You begin to feel alive again. Not liked by everyone, but seen, known, and whole. Carl Jung once warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. These are not just poetic words. They are a psychological alarm bell. When we repress emotions, impulses, or memories that we believe are unacceptable, we don't erase them. We merely exile them into the unconscious, but in doing so, we surrender control. What we push away doesn't disappear. It grows teeth in the dark. The very emotions we deny, anger, envy, fear, desire, begin to take on a life of their own, influencing our behaviors, relationships, and decisions from behind the scenes. You think you're making free choices, but you're actually dancing to the rhythm of unseen forces. For example, the person who represses anger may erupt in passive-aggressive ways or attract partners who embody that rage. The person who denies their sexuality may obsessively judge others or fall into compulsive behaviors. The more we push something down, the more power it gains. And the irony is tragic. In trying to stay in control, we end up being controlled by the very things we refuse to face. Repression often starts early. As children, we absorb messages about what parts of ourselves are acceptable and what must be hidden. Maybe you were told that boys don't cry, or that nice girls don't get angry. Maybe you were punished for being too loud, too sensitive, too emotional, too much. Over time, those parts of you were pushed underground. Not because they were bad, but because they threatened your connection to love and safety. But just like burying toxic waste doesn't stop it from seeping into the soil, repressing parts of the self doesn't neutralize their influence. They leak out in our dreams, in our reactions, in moments of stress. The people closest to us often become the targets of our displaced emotions. We may snap at them, project our unresolved pain onto them, or unconsciously recreate old dynamics. From childhood, this is what Jung meant by the unconscious directing your life. You're not living from conscious choice, but from compulsion. And that compulsion is rooted in what you haven't been willing to see. Your shadow, unacknowledged, becomes your saboteur. The more we repress, the more fragmented we become. The psyche longs for wholeness, but repression creates division. There is the self you show the world, your persona, and the self you hide, the shadow. The wider the gap between the two, the more inner tension you feel. And that tension doesn't go away. It shows up as anxiety, shame, self-sabotage, or mysterious emotional breakdowns that seem to come out of nowhere. Jung believed that neurosis is often a result of this inner split, not the presence of darkness within us, but our refusal to face it. In trying to be good, we become fake. In trying to avoid discomfort, we breed dysfunction. This is why Jung's psychology isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real. You don't heal by pretending the shadow isn't there. You heal by turning toward it with radical honesty. This doesn't mean acting on every dark impulse, but acknowledging its presence. When you recognize the parts of you that you've rejected, they lose their power to control you. Awareness doesn't fix everything, but it gives you your power back. Think about the last time you overreacted to something. A comment, a look, a perceived slight. Chances are, it wasn't about that moment. It was a trigger, a flare, from the unconscious signaling unresolved material. What you repress waits for moments of vulnerability to surface. It's not trying to hurt you, it's trying to be integrated. The shadow, in Jungian terms, is not evil. It's simply everything you've been unwilling to claim, and the more you own it, the more whole you become. Integration doesn't mean indulging destructive behavior. It means understanding where it comes from. Your jealousy might hide a deeper fear of abandonment. Your rage might be protecting a wound of betrayal. Your numbness might be shielding unprocessed grief. When you approach these feelings with curiosity instead of shame, you begin the work of healing. Jung taught that the goal of life is not to become good in a moralistic sense, but to become whole. And wholeness requires truth, even when it's messy, even when it's painful, because in the end, what you repress will either destroy you or transform you. The choice is yours. There's a kind of anger that doesn't explode. It simmers. It hides behind politeness, forced smiles, and phrases like, "It's fine" or "Don't worry about it." It's the anger of the compliant, the peacemaker, the person who has spent a lifetime putting others first. But just because it's silent doesn't mean it's harmless. In fact, this kind of hidden rage is often the most dangerous because it festers beneath the surface, unnoticed, unacknowledged, and unprocessed. Carl Jung would say that when we repress our aggression to maintain an ideal image, the good girl, the nice guy, that energy doesn't go away. It retreats into the unconscious and starts to mutate. It shows up in passive-aggressive behavior, sarcasm, chronic resentment, and even physical illness. You tell yourself you're just being mature, that you're keeping the peace. But inside, there's a storm, and sooner or later it leaks out in the way you snap at your partner, withdraw from a friend, or suddenly feel an inexplicable need to escape your own life. This is the cost of denying your truth. We often learn to suppress our anger as a survival strategy. Maybe you grew up in a home where expressing negative emotion was met with punishment, withdrawal, or ridicule. Maybe you were praised for being quiet, helpful, or easygoing, and so you internalized the idea that being agreeable was the only way to be loved. Over time, this false self becomes second nature. You smile through discomfort. You say yes when your body screams no. You apologize for things that aren't your fault. But while you might earn approval, what you lose is authenticity. The anger doesn't vanish. It transforms into chronic fatigue, digestive issues, headaches, insomnia. The body keeps score, and it always tells the truth. Jung believed that repressed emotion doesn't just disappear, it becomes the raw material for neurosis, or worse. That unresolved rage can lead to breakdowns, addiction, explosive outbursts, or a deep sense of emotional numbness. You're not just angry, you're abandoned by yourself. And until that inner truth is honored, no amount of external validation will bring peace. There is a twisted kind of comfort in being the one who never causes problems. You become the emotional caretaker, the fixer, the one who absorbs everyone else's chaos while quietly denying your own. But beneath that surface calm is a burning resentment. You resent the people who take you for granted, who expect you to always be okay, but most of all, you resent yourself for betraying your own boundaries in exchange for approval. This internal war is exhausting. You want to scream, but you smile instead. You want to be seen, but you hide. And this dissonance erodes your sense of self over time. You may start to forget what you even want, feel, or believe. Jung taught that the path to individuation, to becoming a whole and integrated human being, requires confronting the shadow, and one of the most suppressed shadows in people-pleasers is rage. Not violence, not cruelty, but the sacred anger that says, I matter too. Until you reclaim that anger, you'll keep playing a role in everyone else's life while disappearing from your own. The hidden rage beneath the smile is not evil. It's not something to be ashamed of. It is a messenger, a flare shot from the depths of your psyche, signaling that something is deeply out of balance, that your boundaries have been crossed, that your needs have been neglected, that your truth has been silenced for far too long. This isn't about becoming aggressive or hostile. It's about becoming honest. Anger, when acknowledged and integrated, is one of the most powerful tools for transformation. It fuels clarity, courage, and change. But when denied, it becomes poison, corroding your relationships, your health, and your soul. Jung didn't ask us to become emotionless. He asked us to become whole. And wholeness means giving space for every part of you, even and especially the ones that make you uncomfortable. The next time you catch yourself smiling to keep the peace, ask yourself, is this kindness or is this fear? You might be surprised by the answer, and that moment of honesty could be the first step toward your liberation. It's a strange kind of suffering when the world believes you're doing great, but inside you're quietly falling apart. You smile, you show up, you say the right things, you function. And that's precisely the problem. You function so well that no one ever stops to ask if you're truly okay. The persona you've built, the competent co-worker, the supportive friend, the caring partner, becomes so convincing that even you start to doubt your own pain. Carl Jung warned of this trap. When we identify too deeply with the mask, we disconnect from the deeper truths bubbling beneath the surface. And one of those truths might be this: you are not okay. You haven't been okay for a long time. But you've become so good at performing fine that the real you, the hurting you, has been buried alive under layers of perfectionism, humor, helpfulness, and control. Everyone praises your strength, but no one sees the exhaustion. They admire your grace, but miss the grief. They hear your laughter, but never the silence that follows when you're alone. Being the one who has it together becomes a prison. Because if you ever break down, it shocks people. If you speak up about your pain, you're met with confusion. But you seem so happy, and that's when the loneliness really sinks in, because not only are you struggling, you now have to convince others that your struggle is real. Emotional invisibility becomes your norm, and it's not because people don't care, it's because they've been conditioned to believe the version of you that you presented, not the one you've hidden. Jung believed that the persona was necessary for social survival, but he also warned that it could become a trap when mistaken for the whole self. And many people, especially the strong ones, become victims of their own facade. They are drowning behind smiles, slowly suffocating under expectations, and yet too afraid to drop the mask. Why? Because if you've always been the reliable one, the cheerful one, the one who never complains, who are you without that role? This dissonance between how others see you and how you actually feel creates a psychological rupture. On the surface, everything looks stable, but underneath, you're struggling with feelings of emptiness, anxiety, or numbness that you can't quite explain. You may begin to question your own reality. Maybe I'm just being dramatic. Other people have it worse. And so the cycle continues. You invalidate your own emotions, minimize your needs, and sink deeper into quiet suffering. Jung described this kind of disconnection as a form of spiritual death, a severing of the self from its core. When the persona becomes too dominant, the soul retreats, and that's when life starts to feel mechanical, drained of color and meaning. You go through the motions, you meet deadlines, you smile at the right times, but your inner world is starving. You may find yourself fantasizing about escape, or craving a crisis just to feel something real. These are not signs of weakness. They are signs of a soul begging to be acknowledged. So why does no one notice? Because we've created a culture that rewards performance over presence. We applaud productivity, not vulnerability. We value being put together over being real. And in that system, those who suffer quietly are often left behind. The nice guy, the good girl, the overachiever, they disappear behind the expectations they fulfill. But here's the truth. Your pain is valid even if no one else sees it. Your exhaustion matters even if you never speak it aloud. And healing begins the moment you stop performing wellness and start honoring your actual experience. Jung believed that the path to authenticity requires great courage, the courage to confront the parts of ourselves we've hidden, denied, or neglected. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy. You don't have to be happy to be lovable. And you don't have to carry it all in silence. The next time someone says, "You seem fine," pause and ask yourself if you're ready to finally tell the truth. There comes a moment, silent yet seismic, when your soul can no longer tolerate the lie your life has become. You may not notice it right away. At first it might feel like a faint restlessness, a subtle sense that something is off. You go through the usual motions, wake, work, smile, scroll, sleep, but something inside feels deadened, disconnected, displaced. Carl Jung spoke of the self as the totality of who we are, conscious and unconscious, and warned that when the persona dominates for too long, the psyche begins to fracture. The soul, the part of you that longs for authenticity, will eventually revolt, and that revolt can come in many forms: chronic fatigue, sudden bursts of rage, panic attacks, or even a creeping sense of meaninglessness. You might lose interest in things that once excited you. You might begin to withdraw from relationships that no longer feel nourishing. These are not signs of laziness or failure. These are symptoms of a soul that's suffocating under the weight of pretense. This revolt isn't always loud. In fact, it's often insidious. You wake up one day and realize you don't recognize yourself anymore. You've spent years trying to be good, trying to please, trying to avoid conflict, and now your inner life feels hollow. This is the backlash of repression. The parts of you that you've silenced, the anger, the sadness, the desires, they don't vanish. They go underground, where they fester, mutate, and wait. And then in moments of weakness or crisis, they erupt. Sometimes it looks like an existential breakdown. Other times it's a slow unraveling. You stop answering texts. You cancel plans. You feel like a ghost in your own life. But this is not the end. It's the beginning. Jung believed that crisis was often the soul's way of initiating transformation. The persona is cracking, and something deeper is trying to emerge. The question is, will you listen? Or will you double down on the mask? For many, this inner rebellion is terrifying. After all, the mask has kept you safe. It's helped you belong, avoid rejection, gain approval. Letting go of it feels like stepping into a void. Who are you if you're no longer the nice one, the strong one, or the one who always smiles? The soul doesn't offer easy answers. It demands surrender. It asks you to descend into yourself, to confront the parts you've exiled. And in doing so, you may uncover long-buried grief, unexpressed anger, unmet needs, and unlived dreams. It's not a comfortable process. It's raw, emotional, and deeply disorienting. But it's also sacred. Jung referred to this as the path of individuation, the journey toward becoming who you truly are. Not who your parents wanted, not who your culture rewarded, not who your trauma shaped, but who you are beneath it all. The revolt then is not destruction. It's a call to come home to yourself. And if you ignore it, the symptoms only intensify. When the soul revolts, it doesn't care about your reputation, your goals, or your 5-year plan. It cares about truth. It will sabotage the life that looks good from the outside if it's killing you on the inside. You might lose the job, the relationship, the identity you've clung to. But what you gain is something far more valuable, inner congruence. No more pretending, no more editing yourself for the sake of peace, no more shrinking to fit into roles that never honored your spirit. The revolt is fierce because the lie has lasted too long. But it's also an act of love, a desperate cry from your true self to be seen, felt, and honored. Jung believed that the unconscious doesn't rise up to destroy us, but to integrate us. It's not your soul that's the enemy, it's the mask. And when you finally stop resisting, when you lean into the chaos instead of avoiding it, you might just discover a version of yourself that feels more alive than ever. Not perfect, not polished, but real. One of the most tragic misunderstandings in the journey of self-awareness is the belief that your shadow, the parts of yourself you've rejected, suppressed, or denied, must be eradicated. Conditioned by religion, culture, and even modern self-help, we come to think of our darker traits as enemies to be conquered. But Jung's work teaches the opposite. The shadow is not to be destroyed. It is to be integrated. These disowned parts are not evil by nature. They're wounded, silenced, and misunderstood. They hold vital energy, creative potential, and raw authenticity. When you suppress them, you don't become good. You become divided. And that internal split begins to leak into your relationships, your behaviors, your mental health. The more you push your shadow away, the more it controls you from behind the scenes. Like a child who has been ignored for too long, it will scream louder and louder, not to hurt you, but to be acknowledged. It wants a seat at the table, not the throne. The shadow is formed through a lifetime of small, invisible betrayals, moments where you were told, "Don't be angry, don't cry, that's not ladylike, boys don't act that way." Each time you repressed a natural emotion or desire to meet expectations, a piece of your psyche was exiled. Over time, you learned to associate parts of yourself, your sensuality, assertiveness, vulnerability, ambition, with shame. And so they were buried. But buried is not gone. These parts continue to live within you, acting out in indirect, unconscious ways, maybe through passive aggression, maybe through addiction, maybe through sabotaging your own joy. The shadow doesn't disappear, it distorts. And unless you shine a light on it, it will keep distorting your life. But the key isn't to shame it further. It's to sit with it, to ask, what part of me have I disowned? What pain have I refused to feel? What am I projecting onto others that actually belongs to me? Facing your shadow requires a different kind of courage, not the heroic kind that fights dragons, but the quiet bravery of self-honesty. It asks you to sit in the discomfort of your contradictions, to admit, I want to be seen, but I'm terrified of exposure, to confess, I act like I don't care, but I crave connection. The shadow holds these paradoxes, and integrating them doesn't mean acting on every impulse, but recognizing them as part of your whole being. Jung believed that wholeness is not perfection. It's the full acceptance of our complexity. The person who embraces their anger becomes capable of true compassion. The one who acknowledges their envy can finally own their desire. By seeing your shadow, you soften its grip. You begin to reclaim the parts of you that were lost to fear and shame. This is not about indulging your darkness. It's about illuminating it so that it no longer operates in secret, sabotaging your efforts to live an authentic life. Healing begins not when you conquer the shadow, but when you make space for it. Imagine sitting across from the ugliest part of yourself and choosing not to flinch, choosing instead to listen. That act alone is revolutionary, because when you can love the parts of yourself that no one clapped for, that no one taught you to value, you start to break the chains of conditional worth. You stop living a performance and start living a life. The shadow doesn't need to be tamed, it needs to be heard, and when it's heard, it transforms. That hidden rage becomes boundary-setting power, that buried grief becomes deep empathy, that rejected sensuality becomes vibrant aliveness. Integration doesn't mean becoming someone new. It means remembering who you've always been, before the masks, before the shame, before the exile. The shadow isn't your enemy, it's your mirror. And if you dare to look into it, not with judgment but with curiosity, you might finally meet the person you've been searching for. The deep-seated desire to please others is perhaps one of the most powerful forces shaping modern lives. It's almost instinctive. We want to be liked, to belong, to be seen as good, kind, and worthy. This desire often starts in childhood, when we're taught that approval equals safety. The more we please, the more we receive validation, and the more we feel loved. But this craving for approval comes with a cost. The more you prioritize others' needs and expectations over your own, the further you move away from your true self. When you give up parts of who you are to fit into the mold others want you to occupy, you begin a quiet, unconscious process of self-betrayal. You disconnect from your core essence, and the more you do this, the more the person you project into. The world becomes a mask that's pleasing to others but empty of authenticity. The approval you so desperately seek may feel fulfilling in the moment, but it can never satisfy the deep need for inner alignment. Your true self becomes a distant echo, slowly suffocated by the weight of social expectations. This betrayal often takes on subtle forms. Maybe you suppress your opinions to avoid conflict, or ignore your own needs to be good enough for others. Perhaps you twist your personality to match the group dynamic, even though it doesn't align with who you really are. Over time, these small compromises erode your sense of self. You begin to forget what you truly desire, what you really stand for, and what brings you joy. You live in reaction to the expectations of others, rather than from the core of your own truth. The nice guy or good girl persona begins to feel like a survival mechanism, a mask you wear to shield yourself from judgment and rejection. But as Jung reminds us, the more we suppress our authentic selves, the more we risk living an inauthentic life. The self-betrayal deepens and the emotional cost rises. The internal dissonance between who you are and who you are pretending to be creates an invisible but overwhelming tension. It shows up as anxiety, exhaustion, or a profound sense of emptiness. Eventually, this disconnection from your true self becomes unsustainable. Your subconscious, which has been quietly tracking these betrayals, begins to scream for attention. It does so through physical symptoms, emotional outbursts, or a growing sense of disillusionment. When you consistently place others' approval above your own well-being, you become a hollow vessel, filled with unexpressed emotions and unmet desires. But the deeper you go into this self-betrayal, the more you start to feel the consequences. Whether it's burnout, resentment, or a total loss of motivation, your soul knows that this path isn't sustainable, and the body follows suit. Jung called this the false self, the identity you've constructed to meet societal expectations. This false self is fragile. It can't carry the weight of your true desires, your personal values, or your unique purpose. And the more you cling to it, the more you risk losing your connection to the inner truth that longs to emerge. But here's the paradox. In trying so hard to please others, you're actually denying the very thing you want the most: authentic connection. Real relationships, whether romantic, familial, or friendships, are built on the foundation of mutual respect, vulnerability, and truth. When you're always performing to meet others' needs, you cannot form these connections authentically. You don't give people the opportunity to love the real you. You only present them with a curated version. The mask you wear becomes the only face they know, and as a result, you start to believe that this version of yourself is the only one worthy of love. But the true connection, the kind that nourishes your soul, only comes when you allow your true self to emerge. It's only when you stop betraying yourself in favor of others' validation that you create the space for real love, both from yourself and others. The real you is enough. And when you embrace that truth, you can finally step into a life that's yours to create. Love is one of the most powerful forces in our lives, yet it remains one of the most misunderstood. We've all been told that love is about finding the perfect partner, someone who completes us, someone who makes us feel whole. But the truth is far more profound. True love cannot flourish if we are not whole ourselves. When we live behind the mask of the good girl or nice guy persona, we are not showing our true selves to others. We present an image, a version of ourselves shaped by social expectations, but not by our authentic desires, fears, or dreams. This false self is an illusion, and it cannot form real, deep, and lasting connections. Love, in its purest form, requires vulnerability, authenticity, and mutual respect. And if we're not being real with ourselves, we can't possibly show up as our full, authentic selves in relationships. Our connections will always be surface level, never tapping into the depth of who we really are. When we hide parts of ourselves, we build barriers that prevent intimacy. We might give off the appearance of being a good partner, always caring, always putting others first. But the truth is, we're withholding the very essence of who we are. We are afraid that if we reveal our true selves, the person we love might not accept us, might reject us, or might see us as less than perfect. But this fear of rejection only perpetuates the cycle of self-betrayal. By trying to maintain the image of the perfect partner, we lose the chance to form a connection based on trust, understanding, and mutual respect. Real love is not about perfection. It's about honesty, about showing the parts of ourselves that we usually keep hidden. Only when we embrace our whole selves, the light and the shadow, the good and the bad, can we enter into a relationship that is truly transformative. Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, is deeply connected to our ability to love authentically. When we are fragmented, when we continue to suppress parts of ourselves, we are essentially living a lie. We can never truly know ourselves, and therefore we can never truly love ourselves. And if we can't love ourselves, how can we offer authentic love to another? The first step in cultivating real love is embracing the truth of who we are, flaws, imperfections, desires, and all. Only by integrating these parts of ourselves can we be whole. Only by letting go of the persona we've created can we allow love to enter. When we stop pretending and start being authentic, we create the space for real love to flourish. This kind of love doesn't depend on perfection. It's about acceptance, understanding, and the willingness to grow together. In relationships, wholeness is what allows us to truly show up for one another. We stop pretending to be something we're not, and we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is the key to connection. When we share our fears, our mistakes, our deepest desires, and our shadow with another person, we invite them into a relationship that is based on truth. This is where true intimacy can be formed. When we are whole, we can enter into a relationship without the fear of losing ourselves. We no longer have to worry about performing or pleasing. We simply show up as we are, and that is enough. Love in this sense becomes a mirror. It reflects back to us our own truth, helping us grow and evolve into our most authentic selves. Only when we are whole can we experience love in its truest, most transformative form. Only then can we step into a relationship that nourishes us, challenges us, and helps us become who we were always meant to be. Becoming whole is perhaps the most challenging and transformative journey we can undertake in our lifetime. It is the process of shedding the layers we have built around ourselves, the persona that we present to the world. This mask, while protective in many ways, is ultimately a barrier to our true selves. The journey toward wholeness requires a confrontation with everything we've repressed, everything we've hidden, and every part of ourselves we've rejected. Jung calls this process individuation, a lifelong endeavor to integrate all parts of the psyche into a harmonious whole. But for many of us, the idea of letting go of the persona feels terrifying. After all, it's what we've relied on for so long to navigate the world. It has become our identity, our safety net. But at what cost? When we live behind the mask of the good girl or nice guy, we are living a life of quiet desperation, disconnected from the parts of ourselves that are longing to be seen, heard, and acknowledged. The path to becoming whole begins with self-awareness. We must first recognize the ways in which we've been living behind a mask. What parts of ourselves have we hidden? What emotions do we suppress? What desires do we dismiss as unworthy or unacceptable? The work of individuation requires a deep honesty with oneself. This process is not about becoming someone different or better. It's about reconnecting with the parts of ourselves that we have abandoned. It's about giving ourselves permission to be imperfect, to be human. It's about shedding the false layers we have accumulated over the years so that we can embrace the richness and complexity of our true selves. The persona, with all its carefully constructed roles and behaviors, cannot survive in the face of this deep self-awareness. It begins to dissolve as we confront our shadow, the parts of ourselves we've denied or rejected. Integrating the shadow is a crucial part of becoming whole. The shadow is not just the dark parts of ourselves, the anger, the jealousy, the insecurities. It is also the repressed potential, the creativity, and the unexpressed desires we have neglected. When we start to embrace our shadow, we stop pretending that we're perfect. We stop denying our flaws and weaknesses, and we allow ourselves to be fully human. This doesn't mean we should indulge in negative traits or unhealthy behaviors. Rather, it means that we accept the totality of who we are, including the aspects of ourselves we've been too afraid to confront. By accepting the shadow, we create space for self-compassion and forgiveness. We recognize that the mask we've worn for so long was never meant to be permanent, and we begin to reclaim the parts of ourselves that were lost along the way. As we continue to integrate the shadow and shed the persona, we move closer to living authentically. We no longer have to perform for others or try to be something we're not. The more we embrace our true selves, the more we begin to attract people and opportunities that resonate with our authentic energy. We stop seeking validation from external sources because we no longer feel the need to prove ourselves. The journey toward wholeness is not an easy one, but it is profoundly rewarding. We start to live from a place of inner truth, which allows us to create relationships, careers, and a life that truly reflect who we are. Wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means acceptance. It means understanding that we are all complex beings, full of contradictions, strengths, and weaknesses. When we stop hiding behind the mask and embrace our true selves, we open up to a life of greater meaning, connection, and fulfillment. The journey of becoming whole is not a destination, but a continuous process, one that requires us to consistently shed the masks we wear and face the truth of who we are. It's about embracing both the light and the shadow within us, acknowledging the parts we've long denied, and finally making peace with our true selves. Carl Jung's wisdom teaches us that only by integrating our shadow and letting go of our personas can we access the deepest parts of our psyche and live in alignment with our true purpose. It's easy to fall into the trap of trying to be liked, of seeking validation from others, and of living a life dictated by external expectations. But as we've seen, this ultimately leads to feelings of disconnection, anxiety, and self-betrayal. The moment we stop pretending and start embracing our authentic selves, we begin to experience life with a sense of wholeness, peace, and genuine connection. Real love, real fulfillment, and real happiness cannot exist until we stop living behind the mask and face the truth of who we truly are. It is only through this radical self-acceptance and individuation that we can finally begin to experience life and love as it was meant to be. Remember, the persona you've built is not who you are. The masks you wear are not your true face. The journey to wholeness may be difficult, but it is also the most freeing and transformative path you can walk. Don't wait another day to start embracing your true self. Take the first step today and watch as the world around you transforms.